Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who's about to host the 300th episode of his favorite podcast,
Tim Longo.
I can't even try to get stuff from Morrowind anymore because, do we even are like we've been not playing the same game the whole time? We still aren't. So any quotes I bring in are not going to be relevant. But happy 300, sir.
300. You too. Holy cow.
6 years and what did we say? 9 days. It was March 5th, I believe. Oh no, March 3rd. So 6 years and 11 days since we started this mad adventure, and still, something like 13 years since you first proposed the idea. So,
yep, you're never gonna drop that one.
Nope, took us a while to get it off the ground.
Yeah. A lot of pre-production, a lot of figuring out what we're going to do. And
that's right. It was all the composing of the original theme. That's what really took the most time. And
we actually had the list of games ready from the beginning. We were formulating the list the whole time.
We're still working through it.
Yeah. We got a list of 1,000 games that we want to get through eventually. So, wow, 300. We both of us are so busy and heads down that it's we knew it was coming up, but then it didn't even register until we're about to
until
record.
I sat down today. We're like, oh look, I'm creating the new episode and here's the link. It's the 300th. Oh no. So
I can't believe
any plans we had for the 300th they're gone. They went out the window. I finished my workday 5 minutes before we sat down to record, so that's what it's been like for me lately.
I can't believe we made 300. It's, to be honest, it's insane to me.
Yep. So obligatory, this is Sparta!
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Fair enough. Yep. Significance of that number. But I don't, every time I tell somebody about the podcast and I say how many we've done and how long we've been going and that we do it basically weekly and, blah, 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 just kind of the pitch. They're always like, wow, how do you do that? How is that even possible to be at that? Numbers, and usually numbers are something that people surprise people, and our numbers are high. So
it's a cadence, right? Doing a weekly thing is, honestly, it's not the podcast itself; it's the hours playing the games that are the things that add up for me.
Yeah.
And this week it was 18 hours.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
That's down really. I looked at back, it was, 70. Oh, it's actually 19 hours, excuse me. And then the week before, I don't know if I have it here. 48. So 48 to 71. So it was 23 hours, last week. So, I actually dipped down a little bit this week, had more D&D prep to do, I guess. But, it's a lot.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I did manage to squeak in 3 sessions. There are couple 2 to 3 hours each, so I did up my game a little bit, but you're always going to beat me on that stuff. Crazy.
I'm only level 39 though. I only gained 3 levels because at a certain point the leveling is slow,
right?
Because many of my major things are maxed out, and the other things I just aren't part of my play style, so I've tried to find ways to, how do I use more conjuration? And, this is I hardly use. And so, it's weird.
Yeah, the skill-based, I just don't know. It's just still weird to me. I can appreciate it intellectually, but I guess I've just been too ingrained into just player-based progression choices instead of just, so it's still, I'm at 100 speed. I'm at 80 acrobatics, 50 athletics, and I'm still running and jumping everywhere as I go. You know what I mean? I just jump all the time.
Because it's the way you play now. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just because I'm, and that makes my numbers go up. So I'm going to keep doing it, and I can like the distances I can jump, are, and the speed that I'm moving. Like I basically can run away from anything if I need to. Yeah. It's just so funny.
Actually, now that you say that, I had a weird thing happen, I think, the last time I played, which was that I've been using Short Blade a lot more because that was one of the skills for the Assassin's Guild, which I've also completed. And so because I had felt like, I was the leader of the Fighters Guild, and that gave me a certain amount of power, leader of the Mages Guild. But, you can't just go out and kill people as those. You have to have, some sort of pretext. And it'd be much better if somebody just handed me a writ and said, "Here, go kill this person. It's totally legit. You're cool. Here you go." And so I decided to go do that. And I was going to retire into the Thieves Guild, but unfortunately, at some point in the Fighters Guild quest line, I ticked them off enough that they will never have me. I am not allowed to be a member of the Thieves Guild.
Interesting. So, how come you wanted to retire in the Thieves Guild? That seems specific.
I don't know, build up a lot of money, basically, just kind of, because I was getting it's like, it's just all killing all the time, and maybe it'd be better if I could just go take stuff out of people's pockets directly, instead of killing them and taking them out of their pockets. I could just like skip the killing part, but that didn't happen.
There was a funny moment this last session where I finally went to one of the Imperial forts that I hadn't been to. And I walked in there and I was looking for somebody for, I guess it might have been related to the main quest. And, probably, yeah. And all the guards started running around and sort of chasing me, but like not really chasing me, but it was just like, the Imperial guards. And so I was like, what's going on? So I started running away. Like I was trying to run from them because I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and of course, I didn't need to, I guess, but that's what it was. I had gone in there to kill somebody that's what it is. It was in a fort, an Imperial fort. I guess it was the first mark that I had that was in an Imperial fort. And it was actually one of the leaders of the Dark Brotherhood. And I killed them. And then I walked outside and the guards started coming after me. And so once they got me, of course I have the writs, right, for proof. And I guess because I hadn't been to an Imperial, town or fort the whole game pretty much, they're like, "Oh, you're in trouble. Like this is bad. You got to pay us 1,000 gold or whatever." Right. And I said, "Nope, I don't." And I clicked the writ option, and I gave them like 10 writs that I owed them.
Yeah, this was in Ebonheart. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because you had to talk to a guy to go to the Dark Brotherhood, right? Oh, maybe you haven't done that before.
No, it wasn't. I think it was actually it wasn't Moon Moth. I think it was in, what's the P one? Pelagia. It might have been Pelagia.
Yes, there's a fort in Pelagia.
Yeah, there's some Imperial. Yeah. So I think it was in Pelagia. It was in an inn there. It was to get the belt for the Morag Tong.
Oh, right. Yes. You do have to kill somebody in there. Yeah. That's right.
She's in.
Yeah,
she's
you have
up
to go upstairs, and she's in one of the rooms. Yeah. Right. Yep. Okay, I'm on the same page now.
Yeah. I haven't done the Ebonheart stuff I want to do because I would like to finish this game having vanquished the Dark Brotherhood, but I don't. I think that's where I need to go next for that, if I recall. But I don't know if I'll have time. So the Dark Brotherhood may need to persist.
Yeah, you have to do that as well. You kill the Dark Brotherhood another way, or you go after them. You're going after them both in the Assassin's Guild, but also from the main quest, and that's a separate
interesting
path, right? So as the Assassin's Guild, they're your rivals, but those are not the same. You're not going after the same people, which is really wild. You kind of get sent all over the place to like find Dark Brotherhood people and deal with them. Like there's one that you're trying to convert, and then killing other ones. It's a whole thing. So
it's neat how they're. I mean, obviously, it's the economy of game development use, like the way that they're using the tools they have. The economy of that is very impressive to me because they don't have a lot of things they can do. And of course, a lot of how they do it is just through written text. They don't have VO, etc. But the fact that they kind of, that there's this random person in this random place that is a member of the Dark Brotherhood, it sort of lands because you're like, well, of course they're hiding in plain sight.
Exactly.
They're of course that she's up in this room living her life. It's like, that's what I would do if I were a Dark Brotherhood member. It's like, I'm going to, but you feel very spy-like because you're going to, you know about the fact that she's a Dark Brotherhood person, and you kind of go in and take her out. So it's
right.
It's neat how they have made they've made a lot out of a little.
I think the only way that probably would have landed a little better would be if you encountered these people, sort of as part of your normal interactions. I think that's the one thing that's maybe missing, is that you don't have that moment of like, oh, that person's a Dark Brotherhood spy or something like that. So there's, it's more like, of course they're just among us, and,
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. However, the one I mentioned pre-show that I won't tell you who it is, there is one that might actually be like that, and I had it spoiled for me because I was looking, like I said, in pre-show, I was trying to see how many steps I actually have left so I could gauge it. And so I saw the title and unfortunately gave away the name, but when I saw the name, I was like, oh, what? Nice. Because I just had talked to this person recently to do for another thing. So I was like, wow, okay. So I don't know what the story is. I don't know why you have to kill this person, but I don't know if it's Dark Brotherhood or not. But it is that moment of, like you said, where you've interacted with this person. You were told to talk to this person early in your career, right? And you kind of have a different sense of who they are. But then when, as a grandmaster of the Morag Tong, you're supposed to go take them out. You're like, wow, why, what happened? What'd they do wrong? So yeah.
So there was another point. I actually thought this week I gotten to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing the main quest now. Now that I'm 85 hours in or whatever, it's time to start on the main quest. I mean, I'd done a lot of stuff, but there was a point at which I just kind of like drifted away from it and went and finished a ton of other guild quest lines. So, I had done several things, and there was a cool thing coming up for you that I thought was quite neat. That will lead you to the dissident priests, which I think is
that's my next step. Yeah,
your next big step. You have to find somebody and spring them from a place, and that part is really cool. I think, but I like that a lot, and I'm not going to spoil that for you because it is a good moment. It was a moment where I was like, I didn't even realize X, and now I have to go to X, and you'll see that. So I'm kind of curious to see if you had noticed it prior to that.
That's cool,
because I had not. So that was cool.
Well, and then I also like to that point, there's a step in there where Cassius tells you, Cassius, is that his name?
Cassius, yeah. Cassius Prasades.
It tells you go to Vivek and talk to some people about, I guess they're actually different people. One of them was a member of the Morag Tong. There's 3 people you talk to. And you kind of get different information from each of them. But the woman in the library comes back up later, and he references her and says, well, I'm going to tell this information to her. She's going to be interested in it. So you're kind of building up this cast of characters all related to this thing. And you were the one that kind of went and talked to them, so to your earlier point, it's kind of neat that they're.
Yeah, she's going to come up again.
Oh, cool.
It's Mello or something like that.
It starts with
something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Milo, Mera Milo, something like that. Something along those lines. But so she's gonna come up again. So that was a cool little bit of that quest. But anyway, I'd finally come back around to it, and I got to a point where I needed to figure out how to start the next big thing of the main quest. And I tell you, I was very confused. There was a point at which I needed to talk to, in this one Ashlander camp, I needed to talk to this person who was not the wise woman, but was like another elder. And you had to talk to them, but then go back to the wise woman or something. But I didn't get that. Like, I thought at that point I was supposed to go to the other camps. And it was like, literally, leave this place and go, 15 feet and enter this other yurt. and you could advance the quest. But I went around to the other 3. I'm running around the world, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? You know, and then it was finally yesterday morning when I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just go back and talk to that person again. And then that's when I realized, oh, you want me to talk to literally the wise woman in this camp that is not you, even though you're the person who's been sending me on this thing. It's just like, oh, are you kidding me? And then I did it again because I didn't understand I had to come. I mean, it was a very, it's like, talk to the wise women for counsel. And I'm like, well, there's 4 wise women.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, which one do I talk to? And it's like, well, just keep talking to the same one, apparently. So if you get to that point and you feel like, oh, I need to run all over the world to ask questions to find the right wise woman, you probably don't.
Yeah.
You're probably in the right place, and you just need to go to the other yurt. So, should that happen to you, it was a very frustrating moment.
All right, that's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll save you. I mean, for me, that was like an hour of just running around and okay, I guess this person doesn't know about it, because you can't get to those places quickly. There's no fast travel to the. I mean, this one camp I actually had as my fast travel or my recall spot, because I was like, well, I'm going to want to come back here. So I actually went all around the world to the other camps, and then I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I guess I'll go back to that camp. And that's when I discovered, oh, this was the place I was supposed to be all along.
Yeah,
so that's fun.
I mean, that's happened to not as extreme a version, but I feel like that's happened to me a handful of times, where it's usually because I'm skimming the text, to be honest, right? Yeah. It's like it's in there, but like we talked about, it's not a hand-holdy game, so they're not going to hand it to you in a silver platter. And the quest, the journal and quest log, and the quest log's fine, I guess, but the journal, it's like it's because it enters in the entries linearly. It's like,
yeah,
it's like, whoop.
How many pages back was that?
Yeah.
Can I find the keyword? Like in this case, I was looking for the keyword and it was no help. I was like, well, what else could it be? I mean, it was very, it was hard to find. The other thing too is that the text from when people are speaking to you is quite small. And for me, and I actually find that it's very hard to read. Because it's in this stylized sort of
it's in this
calligraphic sort of font. You're just kind of looking at it, and it's a little hard to read. And if you've been playing for a couple of hours, you definitely are like glazing over on the text, which is a risk for text.
Well, it was also I don't think it was designed for the resolution you're probably running at, and I'm running at. I put it up at the. Are you playing at the highest resolution you can, or are you playing at?
I am, yeah. That's a good point.
Because it's like
if the text probably didn't scale properly, right?
No, I mean it didn't. Yeah. I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think it scales at all. I think it's just literal.
It's pixel perfect font, and so it's tiny. Yeah, that's true. It's not the easiest thing to read either. From that standpoint, that's a good point.
Built for like 800 by 600 or something,
Yeah, probably would have looked great on my gateway monitor. I should plug that thing in.
Oh no! No, you should not. You need to get rid of that thing.
It's true. I do.
Gateway, that's a blast from the past.
My gateway monitor purchased in 1994. Yes, folks, I still have it.
Yeah,
my 28-year-old monitor.
He does.
I don't have the PC, but I do have the monitor. I have a couple of other PCs, since then, but not that one. Oh man, I have. You got
stuff
in my life.
Yeah, you got stuff to do there.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, I've paused the Morag Tong, because that was my main, as everyone knows from previous episodes, because I'm not playing as much. I was just using that as the main way to sort of experience the game, so it was a very weird lens. But I did switch over to the blades, and like you mentioned earlier, I'm at that step with the dissident priest or whatever. But it has been fun.
It's a pretty good fit for you though, because a lot of the skills overlap. I think so. Like you can advance in the blades, I think, pretty easily.
I haven't. There maybe marksman overlaps. maybe light armor.
Light armor, I was thinking maybe. Yeah, light armor was the other one I was thinking probably overlapped.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, something else. But I haven't. Yeah, I don't think I've had any trouble advancing. Like, what happens if you don't? Yeah, I to be honest, I'm still a little confused on the difference between leveling up and how you gain faction based on the skills. Because I can read the descriptions that you hover over to see, like, you need a skill at this amount, you know, skill at 50 and then 2 skills at whatever it is, 20.
Right.
But yeah. I've advanced in the Morag Tong before without achieving that. And so I don't, you know, so I don't know. Like I still don't quite get it.
You can do the quests. You can continue to do quests. Right? It's a separate thing. Is like what your rank is in the faction is a separate key, you know, a separate, you know.
What does that get you though? What does your rank get you? Like if you go up in rank?
In some cases you won't be able to advance the guild quest line once you're at a certain point. For example, in the Fighters Guild quest, you know, there's this branching point I described previously where it's like, oh, I could go and kill all the Thieves Guild, or I could go and, you know, kill the lieutenants of the current champion. I couldn't have even started on those things without getting up to the point where I could next advance to, like, I had to be a master. I had to be one below master, rather, of the Fighters Guild. I forget what that's called. So, like, they wouldn't have even proposed those things to me until I was ready to actually, you know, to be close enough to move on to the end of the whole quest line.
Okay. And it has nothing to do with your actual level then?
No, it's completely independent of real level. I mean, not really completely, because, of course, as you're leveling those skills, you're also leveling. So there's usually, I'm sure there's some correlation, but, you know, it's probably difficult to... Yeah. I guess what you could do is like pick a build that has nothing to do with the Fighters Guild, like that none of the skills overlap. And so you have all like your heavy armor and your axe and shields or whatever things that you would have for the Fighters Guild were like all non-level advancing skills for you. So I guess in theory, you could probably join the Fighters Guild and never level up and do all their stuff and still get all these skills up to like 80 and stuff and not level, because they wouldn't be any major or minor skills. I guess that's theoretically possible. It just seems unlikely.
That sounds crazy. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that there's got to be some equation that, yeah.
I think it's possible. Like you could just go and you could be upping, you know, I mean, you wouldn't up any of your things. I think things would be extremely difficult for you. But you could get your armor up and your fighting up and I don't know. Those are the sorts of things where I'm like, I know that there are people out there who have done these things, because you start thinking like, well, what if I picked a pure mage build and then went and did the Fighters Guild quest where none of my stuff overlapped, and you'd be like level 1 the whole time, you know, and that would be weird, but you could probably do it, because of course you could, because it's that kind of game.
Yeah, just kind of grokking the systems design behind all of this stuff is just, it breaks my brain. It's almost like it's almost like I don't want to know how the math all works. Like maybe they tell me maybe they tell you a little bit too much information because, or at least for me, because you kind of want to do the math on things, but I kind of don't. Like, I just want to play the game and have the game reward me for playing the way I'm playing versus like, right. But I'm sure that's why, obviously, as we talked about before, I'm sure that's one of the reasons this is sort of that cult, you know, class or cult favorite, because of all of those. I don't know, maybe the others do the same stuff, but, and have the same weirdness, but it just seems like it's all just there, you know, like they just put it all out there. And that's interesting. That's interesting that they were that committed to it. So. Yeah,
I mean the idea that you can just go and look and you're like, well, where am I with this guild right now? You know, and it just tells you. But there is stuff that's still hidden from you. So even though you have a, you know, whatever you have, it tells you what skills you need. For example, I have to have one of these skills has to be 80 and two have to be 30 or 35 or something to become the master of the Fighters Guild. That's true, but I also have a faction reputation that is not visible to me.
Yeah.
Which is just wild to me, because that's what prevented me doing the Thieves Guild quest, is having done something against them as a Fighters Guild quest, I think. It made my faction reputation with the Thieves Guild below 0, and there's no way to raise it without being in the Thieves Guild. So I'm locked out. I can't do that thing. It would be possible to do it all in one playthrough, I think, but you'd have to know that and not do that thing, right? You'd have to join the Thieves Guild before you did this thing for the Fighters Guild. I think it's possible. And in fact, probably if you went and joined everything you could as soon as possible, there's other things I'm cut off from because I've done too much Nerevarine stuff. I can't join, the houses in Vivek, Redoran and Halelu and Telvanni.
Yeah. I'm
basically cut off from those Imperial houses, which have their own quest lines.
Oh, really? I wonder if I've done... I know I have... Yeah, you're actually right. I have some quests, because I've spent so much time in Vivek that I have some quests started for them, and the tag on the quest, the prefix title for the quest says...
Right, Halelu or Redoran.
So I didn't realize it was related, associated with the houses, but that makes sense now, yeah. But of course, the reason they're cut off to you because they don't believe in the Nerevarine, right?
Right. They're like, I'm hiding behind some false name or whatever.
Yeah.
Which was another confusing thing, I'll say, because I got to a point in the main quest where I was told by one of the wise women, who was 20 feet away from the other wise woman, hey, you've got... Not that I didn't go around the world looking for her, but hey, you've got it. Your next step is not only do all 4 of the tribes have to acclaim you the Nerevarine, the 3 houses also have to make you become their Hortator, I think it's called.
Yeah,
H-O-R.
I remember that.
T-A-T-O-R, and I was like, okay. So I'm like, I don't know what that means. So I went to House Redoran, and this was another thing I had to look up finally, because I'm like, okay, because now I knew I was locked out of the Thieves Guild quest, and I went and talked to the person, and they're like, you can never join House Redoran. And I'm like, but I have to. In order to finish the main quest, I'm supposed to join your house and be your Hortator, whatever the heck that is.
Or maybe it's not about joining. Maybe it's about being there. Maybe it's like they recognize you as the Antichrist or something.
Right. Well, there's basically another person you go talk to who's not like the guild quest line giver that you're supposed to talk to instead. So that's what I looked up. I was like, I would never
this is
never
elaborate.
In a million years would I know to do in the year 2002, I can imagine going, okay, well, I can imagine basically saying, I'm going to trust the designers and I'm going to go talk to everybody that I can. In fact, they give you a book with a list of important people in the house. So there's probably and there may even be clues in there. I went and looked and was like, well, is there the person I'm supposed to talk to? Because I looked it up. Is that person listed in this book? And they were, and it told me where they were to be found. I was like, okay, well, that's what I got to go do, and I'll go do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But maybe that's what I would have done in 2002. But I have to say, in 2022, it's not the sort of thing we do very much anymore.
Well, but yes, true. But I do know, I feel like unless you're really playing this in an exhaustive way, like we've talked about some friends who have fond memories of the game and played it that way, Reed, Greg specifically. One of the things that, because I think I attempted starting this game 3 times or so.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always, and I think we even had mail people write in about this, right? One of the things that always pushed me off were those moments of not just confusion, but just opaqueness of just like, where do I even begin, to figure this thing out that I'm supposed to do or whatever. And in that case you just gave, like, yeah, technically it's in there. And if you would have opened the book first, you would have seen blah, blah, blah. But the fact that you went to the house leader and the house leader gave you negative reinforcement on your theory that you should be talking to them, like, that's a big no-no. I mean, that's a big, like, no, but this other lady told me to do this thing. They didn't say talk to the guild leader. They said talk to,
I knew I had a big inflection point, right? Because there's a spot where I find this big thing that I'm supposed to do for this main quest. And I'm like, okay, well, I saved before that. And then I actually started it because I tend to just like keep saving over the same save. And so I go in and I'm like, and this big event happens and I'm like, oh, that was a big deal. Like, I'm going to start a new save from this point. And I went and did a ton of, stuff talking, going all around the world to these wise women or whatever. And then, finally figured out what I was supposed to be doing. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let me go to House Redarin and find out what I need to do to become their Hortator or whatever. I mean, there are things I'm going to have to do, right? But I found somebody who was like, oh, you need to talk to this person if you want to join the house. And this was like over in Balmora somewhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go do that. And so I go do that. And come back and talk to the person. And they're like, actually, no. And then I had to go to Aldrun, I guess. Like, I mean, I'm going all over the place. Luckily, I'm used to all this, how to travel to all these places. I know how to get everywhere now. But I can't imagine, like, if you're trying to just play the main quest, you're like 10 hours in and you're like, I don't know how to get anywhere. You would definitely be making maps. Anyway, point is, I was directed specifically to talk to this one person, and I go to them and they say, we will you're the false blah and this and that. And there's a whole paragraph about why I'm not good. You'll never be allowed to join House Redarin. And I'm like, so I reloaded that save before I started that part of the quest. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll go do that part again. And then, because they said something about like not going too far with the tribes. And I'm like, and then I'm reading it all more closely. And I'm just like, I mean, opacity is the right word. Because at that point, I'm like, I don't know what I did wrong. And that's when I went and looked it up. Because I was like, I'm baffled. I'm like, oh, okay, actually, I was fine. There's some other person I'm supposed to talk to, and I don't know how I would have found that out. And having looked it up, it's impossible for me to kind of recreate like what I would have had to do at that point. So I definitely was very, very confused. Yeah, it's just too big of a game for there to be sort of any percentage of trial and error. I feel like this is kind of a trial and error conversation where like, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. Like another example, I was like, I had this moment of dread. I think this is on the main quest. Yeah, this is on the main quest too, where you have to get that. You find that one guy in a bar in Aldrun. Yeah, and the rat in the pot. Yeah,
and he wants poetry, and I was like, that's one of those moments for me of like, oh man. I gotta go find poetry. How am I gonna how am I gonna do that? It's like it's that moment of just. I
mean, that's something you hear in games all the time. I gotta go find poetry. If I could just find some poetry here, please.
Well, it was sort of like it was both a good thing and a bad thing for me because there was that moment of dread where I was just like, oh no, poetry. Like, how would I've not been paying attention to books. I don't even know, so. They did think it through, obviously, because there's a bookseller in that town. I was like, oh, right. I know there's a good one in Vivek City, so I could probably go back there, but I didn't really want to do that. And so luckily there was one there, but there was also this great moment of I was reading through the list of books that the bookseller had, and I wasn't, obviously you're not sure which one. It doesn't really say which one's a poem or not. But I chose the right one on the first try of one that I thought was probably a book of poetry, and I ended up being right. And then I gave it to him, and he referenced the title. I'm sure he would reference the title if you gave him other poetry books. I can't imagine the one I gave him was the exact correct one, and that's only that one. But so it was a roller coaster ride because it was like, man, I don't want to go scouring the world for poetry right now. but then, having that nice little revelation as well. But my point being is like, if that hadn't been luckily in the same town and the bookstore being like doors away, like that trial and error of just like searching and like trying to figure out what is the right book is just, it's punishing at a scale this big.
And it's very possible, right? Because I know where that bookseller is. It's very possible that would not be on your mini map, depending on how you came in, right? So you might not have even known to just stay in Aldrin and look for it, right? I mean, that's the other thing too, is because it's very common for them to send you because you can take the silt striders and things like that to get around. It's very common for them to be just like, oh yeah, you have to go, halfway across the world to get, this thing, right? And the expectation is, well, you'll just take, some kind of transport to get more close, to where you want to go. And in your case, it'd be like, well, I guess I got to go back to Vivek and then climb around to, I don't remember. I guess he might be in the foreign quarter.
Yeah, it's in the foreign quarter, yeah.
And then I'll go to that Joe Bash's rare books, and maybe he's got some poetry, and and like I could, and then being like, which one? And if it's early enough on in the game, it might also be like, well, I guess I don't have enough money. I'll try this one, like in hope. I mean, it's a whole
Yeah, I mean, luckily the titles of all the books he had, were close enough to me understanding that this is probably a book of poetry. So obviously I had enough money to buy more than one, but once I bought it and opened it up, I was like, this looks like, I think this is going to do it. And
be honest though, Tim, you bought the Lusty Argonian Maid first.
No, I've not even acknowledged that I've seen that. But is that actually a book in there? Oh, you've mentioned it before. Yeah.
You're covering well. Well.
Oh, that's so funny. What was the other thing I was going to say about sort of...
Actually, I feel like there's a guy putting on a play of it as well. I think
there is that whole theater quest line.
Yes, I think actually that's the thing where he's actually gonna put on the Lusty Argonian Maid.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I do. That's one of the few side quests that I want to do, because I found, like I said, I found the person that is looking for a theater troupe and trying to put on something, and then I found the dude who wants to join a theater troupe. So it's just there's a great sequence in The Witcher 3 related to theater that I just loved. And I half wonder...
Someday, Tim, I'm going to play that game.
Yeah, you'll get to it. But I half wonder if there was any influence from Final Fantasy IX with it, to be honest. But I think it's more just Shakespeare. But anyway, or theater in general. But anyway, and then the other thing that's surprising me about the main quest is, I mean, of course, the blades and the whole sort of Cassius being a spy master, and like they're doing a good job, again, a lot with a little, making you feel special, right? They talk about how you finally get the information that you were let out on purpose by the king, or the emperor rather, and sort of like unraveling, and then there's like a decoded message. And then before we started tonight, I looked up Amaya, because like one of the code words they used was Amaya. Like the lady in the library said, if I need to be contacted, I'll use the code word Amaya or whatever, I'm like, I'm in, this is spy stuff. We're doing this. And, and it just feels like they're again, doing a lot with a little, and they've built it up. And then when you go to Vivek, which it was kind of neat for me, because I spent most of the, like Vivek has been my home base.
You spent so much time
from the beginning. And so when Cassius sent me there, I was like, this is my place. And so I was, and then but again, people that I haven't really needed to interact with before, like I've been to the bookstore, right? But then there's like the friend of the bookstore, and you go and meet the one cat person, which I forget their
Khajiit,
and he's in the bar, and he's like, I will tell you what you need, but I need an escort to the bookstore where my friend works.
Right, yeah.
And you're like, oh, sure, dude, I'm here for you. And then as soon as you say yes, the people in the bar are like, no, you don't. And, like the fight breaks out. So you're kind of I'm making up these stories. You can kind of see like these these guys were like watching this poor fellow, and they're like sitting in the corner waiting for him to move, and he's like eyeing them, and I don't know, you just kind of, you fill in the blanks with these older games because the fidelity is so low, right?
Right.
And then you escort him there, and you feel like you feel like a badass. And
then forever he's there with an ordinator coming or ordinator or whatever, one of the guards coming the opposite direction, and they're the guy's walking into the cat person the whole time, and you're trying to get by, and you're like, God. I just need to see Joe Bash.
The collision.
Please let me get by. Yeah. Oh my God.
Luckily my jump is so high I can usually you
can get through
them.
That way. Oh, that's good. Yeah, because for me, I'm not, and of course I'm also carrying 500 pounds of stuff. But I've gotten to the point where because I was doing the Assassin's Guild quest, that was my recall point for a long time, and I was like, coming out of there, I knew exactly how to get by every person because they were mostly standing in the same place, which would block you if you didn't know exactly the right direction to kind of come around this person to squeeze by. Oh, it's so ridiculous. Oh, it's very funny. It's very funny.
You mentioned it earlier, but I jogged my memory on one of my notes. I'm impressed with how much fast travel they have in a game in this era of this size. Like it feels like early. What would they have been influenced by at this time? Maybe Final Fantasy, sort of, because you can kind of travel from city to city or town, I feel like, but because of the overworld. But I don't know. It just feels like they're pretty generous. Like, and there was a whole era of the early open world games where I feel like teams were still trying to figure out how much fast travel is too much and what the right ratio is and stuff. But in this game, it's very, you have the gondolas in the city, in Vivek City, you have the ships, you have the striders,
Silt Striders,
you have the mage,
right, the Mage
Guild.
Yeah.
I don't know what those pylons do, but maybe they're also something, but, is that everything?
Oh man, I wonder if they are. That would be interesting.
Yeah, so it's just, there's a lot of ways to get around.
I don't know. See, I'm dying actually to know what those things are, because now that I know they're a thing and where to find them, I'm just like, I wonder what that does, And that's one of the things that I think, because anything feels possible, I don't know what that's going to do, and it just makes me go, God, I got to go find out.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was saying 70 hours ago. Am I the guy who examines the dwarven ruins now? Is that me? Because those are the sorts of things that get their hooks into me. Is I don't really, like I said, I don't really care about the lore. But when it's like, here's this mystery that you can see, like you go here and there's a thing you don't know what it does, and wow, what is that? And I want to know. So when I found the dwarf, in the dwemer, along the main quest line, that was a big moment for me because I already had all these questions, what is that? Which for me goes back because I don't think there's, and I may be wrong because hundreds of hours of gameplay in Skyrim, and I still haven't seen everything rather. But I don't know if there's a dwemer in Skyrim. So I have this hundreds of hours of mystery from Skyrim and Oblivion that was never resolved for me because I hadn't played Morrowind. So I didn't know that there was one dwemer that I could talk to. Yeah. So it's been a whole ride, this one, from that standpoint, because that was the one thing I was just like, and you don't want to ask your coworkers who've been working on this thing for, 10 years or whatever, longer, hey, so what's the deal with these dwarves that have disappeared?
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh man, you idiot! What are you doing?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The person who was my producer, Kevin Kaufman, for Skyrim, he was attached to my group. He had been the QA lead on Fallout 3. And I was shameless. I would just call him all the time, and I'd be like, "Hey, I'm trying to get all the bobbleheads. I'm looking for the bobblehead for this, And he'd be like, "Oh man, okay, I think that one's in Paradise Falls." And he would just rattle off things for me, and he was so patient. And this was right when I started. I was playing a ton of Fallout 3, and trying to find performance issues and things like that when I first started, get to know the code and etc.
Yeah.
but I would just run around the game and look for things that were weird. And, you know, Todd also wanted feedback on like, how does it feel? Because, you know, fresh eyes, basically, you lose perspective. And so, yeah, I mean, but I wasn't going to do that with Skyrim, where people have been working on this franchise for already 15 years or whatever.
Yeah. Fallout 3 was more of a fresh start for them.
It was new for them. Yeah. So it was like, well, okay, I can feel free, you know, and ask, but yeah, anyway.
I mean, there's sort of like that's the double-edged sword of how, I mean, because they're sort of infamously known for their books. I'll use as an example, right? And it's like as a franchise, and that's sort of, in a way, it's sort of one of the daunting things that has always kept me away, because it feels like there's just so much there, right? And it is really hard for me. I was talking about this with Reed. It was really because he and I both play these games in similar ways when we do play them, and he was just saying, like, it must be so hard for you to not spend the time and sink into it, you know, because we're playing for the podcast. And it is, because I know I'm leaving all this lore behind, you know, and there's all these proper nouns that I don't know what they mean, and I want to know, but there's just no way. There are so many books and so much going on, and I, you know, it's pro and con for playing for the podcast, but
well, and there's even more of those in Skyrim, and I'm pretty sure there are quests that only kick off if you read books.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Not like a certain number of books, but like specific books will, you know, in specific scrolls or whatever that you'll find will kick off a quest. So if you don't read the stuff, you'll miss things. You know, it's just you know, they just keep pushing that stuff of like, where else could we hook in a quest? What else could we have this thing do? You know, and you can see it in Morrowind, is my point. Like that's it's the same thing that they're doing here, that they continue to do as they make more and more games, is just all the ways you could hook in the systems, you know, and where you could hook in a script to say, okay, you know what, we're going to give you a new quest when you get to the end of this book, you know, and because we'll know you've quote unquote read it at that point, right? And it's just it's madness to me still. So having seen how it all works, it's still kind of like just
it feels like I think House of Cards is too derogatory of a way to put it, but it feels very like it's just like things are just teetering. It's like just all of this stuff is piled on this table or something, and it's all like stacked on top of each other, and it all like there's red thread being connected to everything, you know, and it's like it's all like there, and it's like it's this beautiful mind thing where it's all kind of works, but it could like topple at any second. That's the feeling I get.
I mean, it's enormously flexible, right? The things, I mean, right, and that's, I mean, one of the things we're not going to really talk about is things like modding, and you know, it's enormously flexible for that, and it continues to be a thing, right? That people, I mean, I don't know if people are still modding Morrowind, but you know,
I'm sure
enormous number of mods for Skyrim. I mean, just enormous, right? And of course, we've already mentioned Morrowind. No, Morrowind. Skywind. I got there. I got there in the end.
It's only so many options, but
there's only so many things it could be. So I mean, it's just, and that game's been out, you know, like we were saying, 10 years. So, Well,
the other thing I was talking about with Reed was actually the MMO, because he and I both are big MMO players, and that's one that I haven't been drawn to, because I'm, as I've said on this series, I haven't been really, the world has never grabbed onto me, you know, it kind of hits a bit of a generic quality. That's why like Morrowind is, I think, the closest one for me of being interested in. But since playing Morrowind now, I'm kind of wondering, like, what is Morrowind like in the MMO? Like, how do they handle some of the stuff that's happening here? And I assume there's like a Red Mountain dungeon, you know, and like some of the tropes that you'd want for people to return to who love the series, you know. So there's sort of a fascination for me now of like how it all fits together with, because the ideal, you know, I assume the way the MMO works, similar to other MMOs, it's like they have all the regions, right, that you can go and travel to, and it's all in one game versus split up into multiple games. So that's
exactly right.
That's crazy to think about. I'm sure.
I think what they've done is have added those regions, as the expansions and things like that.
Right.
So,
right. I know Morrowind came out later. Yeah, like as an example.
And Skyrim did as well. Yeah. I know that wasn't part of the original game, because they weren't gonna like immediately come out with the MMO that's got another version of Skyrim in it when Skyrim was still part of the whole deal. So as far as the company goes, but I know they came up with it later.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's a lot of areas yet unexplored, right? I mean, it's been 5 games, but there's all these regions in the continent of something. I should probably know.
Tamriel, yeah. Didn't they announce this? The 6th one is where it's going to take place, though? I thought they did.
They might have.
Region, but anyway, it doesn't. Yeah.
It probably wouldn't mean a lot to me, to be honest. But yeah. Taking Oblivion, I guess Oblivion and Skyrim as an example, because you played them, how much do some of the themes keep continuing on as far as like the bad guys, like Dagoth and the Daedric stuff, and or maybe those are different things. I'm not even positive, to be honest. Dwemer, you said they don't, I assume you still find Dwemer. Oh, there's still tons of ruins and stuff like that. I mean, in Skyrim, there's a ton of Dwemer ruins. I love going to that stuff because it's often very elaborate, and it's just different. I remember the first time going into one in Skyrim, having played Oblivion, and I actually don't remember too much of it in Oblivion. I mean, I'm sure I saw it, but it's been forever since I played that. But I definitely remember the first time going into one in Skyrim and being like, what is this? And just, all this steampunk stuff and tons of brass and all these things moving and, steam and everything. And it's much more realized as well and not as dark also. And because there's the later games are brighter in terms of just moving around. They kind of get away from the darkness and having to use night eye and things like that if you're going to see. I mean, it's still there, but it's just not nearly, in my recollection at least. It's been 10 years since I played Skyrim, so I can't really say for sure, but that's my recollection anyway. But I do remember that first moment of like, oh man, check this out. Like, this is a whole nother thing. And oh my God, these enemies are really tough. And, so it continues to be a whole thing, lots of caves and trolls and bears and things like that. And then, you'll go and find the Daedra appear. There's Daedric stuff, as well. And so all that's, and Atronax and all that, it's all there. They keep that stuff, in moving forward. They don't really, I'm not sure that there's a lot that they don't have. I don't remember the Ogrim, but maybe they were there. I don't remember those in Skyrim. Those are basically the ogres. And I don't think the Clanfear things are in Skyrim that I remember. So like, there's some monsters that drop away, but a lot of stuff is there. Like, I don't know, mud crabs and whatever. So it's all over the place.
And it's also like what I'm also interested in, and I don't know if I'll ever experience, is sort of if there's, like, I think you already mentioned that the Morag Tarn thing in the future, which bums me out. But like, if there's some theme within the Dark Brotherhood or the Thieves Guild or something that continues in, that basically how encapsulated are each of the games, and are there any sort of sense of progression in the world or with characters? Like, do you meet a character again? Those sorts of things, that you met in Morrowind. You're like, oh, it's that person. Those kind of moments are cool if you're somebody who is devoted to a franchise like that. So
I think they have repeated certain things. I feel like there was a place in Morrowind where I found this dude who was just standing in a location remote And he's like, I've found everything there is to do in life. I've adventured far and wide, and now I just want somebody honorable to kill me in hand-to-hand combat. And I'm pretty sure exactly the same thing exists in Skyrim. I'm pretty sure. Like, I don't remember exactly. He might even be named the same thing. And it's just a complete callback, you know, I think. Like, I'm not entirely sure, but that's my recollection.
Yeah.
Like, and it's somebody who I found, you know, this playthrough of Morrowind at like level 15 or 20, and he just mopped the floor with me. He killed me in like 3 hits or 4 hits, and like I couldn't even get a shot on him, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not ready to fight this guy, and I don't know where he is, so I don't know if I'll ever fight that guy at this point, but I bet you get some sweet gear if you do. So I don't know. I think there's stuff like that. Certainly all the sort of, you know, races and, you know, the major monsters and themes and stuff like that. The guild lines, quest lines are, you know, the same sorts of guilds often. There is Dark Brotherhood, so there are Assassins quest lines. There's Thieves Guild quest lines, etc. So all that stuff does continue forward. I think there's fewer of them because when I discovered that each of these houses also had quest lines, my brain kind of broke. I was like, oh my god.
I'm betting those aren't as long as the others though, but yeah, I mean, maybe.
I would hope not, but I have no idea. Like, and I don't know if you can like do the Yojimbo thing where you could play one house off against another, but that would be fun.
Yeah.
You know, work both sides of the street. I'm sure you could probably, you know, like I said, you can probably do all these quest lines kind of, if you do them kind of in parallel, you can probably do them all together.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, we've talked about it before, but as I'm so far down the 2, you know, Moragtong and the Blades, it's interesting to see how, with just me focusing on 2 of them, and you've probably seen this way more doing as many as you've done, but how they are trying to cross them over, you know, like there's a Daedric ruin dungeon that I had to go up to that you may remember that is near a Dwemer fortress that you have to assassinate in. And so when they tell you to go there, because I had done that first, you know, it's like I'm already familiar and I know the area, you know, and it kind of crosses over. And I remember seeing the Daedric ruin in the distance and that kind of stuff. So, you know, I mean, obviously, if you have so many, I want to see the map, like the flowchart map, right? Of like how this stuff all I'm sure if we did even Google search for it, somebody would have it, but because there was one for Daggerfall, because that one was so weird and complicated. But to your point, like where the junction points, but also where and the crossovers are, but also where the termination points are, because certain ones, right, like will terminate another one, and you're like, well, this is over. You're done here, like the Thieves.
Yeah, right.
Thieves Guild
I mean, clearly, if I had killed all the Thieves Guild leaders, I could not, you know, finish that one.
Yeah.
So that would be a real issue. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess we've decided to give this another week. We're just gonna keep. This is now our Morrowind podcast. Thank you. Welcome to the next 300 episodes of Morrowind, where we just keep going. But yeah, we will try. Maybe we'll try to wrap up, and then we'll definitely need to catch up on a lot of email because it's definitely been piling up. We're getting a couple each week, and we're going to do that in a moment. But yeah, we'll at least do one more week, and maybe we'll make an attempt to finish the quest line, the main quest. I would like to, because I will finish the main quest line. I don't know if how much time is left in it. I'm thinking maybe not that bad at this point. Once I realized that I have to talk to different people to become the Hortator, it was like, oh, okay, then that's probably not as deep. Like I thought I was going to have to do a full quest in each of these houses. I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. But I think we have time for that. So.
Yeah, you have. I mean, of the 2 of us, you definitely have to try to finish. I'm not trying to pressure you, but at this point, you gotta.
I gotta do it, man. I'm 90 hours in. I gotta finish this thing. So, all right. Well, let's turn to feedback. So, of course, sir, you have our first one as usual. You want to take this one from Oliver?
Okay, Morrowind. Subject Morrowind from Oliver UV. Trimmed for trimmed for time, it says, Brett.
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
Oh, Morrowind. It's got a place in my heart. I was 15 and a lover of Baldur's Gate, so when I read about the upcoming Morrowind in PC Gamer, I was so very excited. I ordered the collector's edition, even though my computer didn't meet the minimum specs. When I played it, I was immediately hooked. The art direction is the best in any 3D RPG I've ever experienced. The art execution was also fantastic. I have the concept art booklet, so I can tell they really captured the feeling. And what a soundtrack. What a game. So what does it all feel like to play a continuous open world game below minimum specs? It was hard. I noticed that the world is divided up into two types of segments, large chunks and small chunks inside those large chunks. When crossing between them, the game seems to load out far away ones and load in new ones. On a computer that meets the specs, this isn't something you notice. On my computer, the load time was a small chunk. For a small chunk was maybe, 10 to 40 seconds. Wow. And the load time for a large one was 4 minutes. Wait, how does that even work? If you're running straight forward, it takes maybe 40 seconds to cross from one small chunk to the next. There are maybe 10 small chunks to a large chunk. So as I was playing, I had a huge stack of PC Gamer magazines next to me, which I'd read during load times. I reread a lot of articles. The buggy release was, of course, annoying to me, as I frequently have to reboot the game. I'd have to frequently have to reboot the game. The game crashed maybe once an hour on average. When I was in Valmora, it crashed more often. Once, when I was particularly annoyed, with this guard in Valmora looked at me and said, "Any time now." About 5 seconds later, the game crashed to the desktop. I almost suspected a conspiracy. That's amazing. I must still have played the game for a good 60 hours on that computer and some 200 on my next one. This was also the first time I got seriously into any sort of internet community. I found a great fan forum, a good old PHP bulletin board.
Yep. PHPBB was like a quick way to create a bulletin board back in early 2000s.
Got it. I used them, but didn't know what they were called. I spent countless hours at night on my 56K modem, enjoying the game with other fans, discussing funny moments, gushing over the art. I started writing poetry for the first time as I discovered the forum poetry thread. It was a small but great community. I do have some criticisms of Morrowind and other TES games, though. The writing is not great. There are no memorable NPCs. Almost every NPC feels more like a walking billboard rather than a person, since the conversation system is just a topic to canned response mapping. Most NPCs have the exact same response to every topic. This was a letdown coming from Baldur's Gate 2. The combat wasn't fun either, but at the time I didn't even notice. A fantastic world building and art made up for it all. So how would I rate my experience in Morrowind? 10 out of 10. Thanks for the amazing podcast, as always. Warm regards, Oliver UV.
Yep. I was that was one thing I wanted to pick up on specifically was not specifically the PHPBB part of it, but was the communities that grow up around gaming and, or that, happen via the internet these days. But even going back to the early, my first boss, rather, Darren Stinnett, and your boss too at LucasArts for a couple projects. He talked about being on Falcon, I guess 3.0 and MiG, MiG 29, the expansion. I think it's MiG 29. And how communities grew up around those, and that people would play and be on dial-up, to play that had multiplayer. So they were playing multiplayer over modem, back in that day. And they had one of the first ever game cons was a Falcon con. It was called Falcon, of course. It was a Falcon thing, and one time I can remember saying to Darren, like, what we do, we're not curing cancer here or something like that, something dismissive. And it was like, yeah, you know what? This is what we do is really important, in the sense that this is something that people do that brings them together, and that's good. That's a good in the world, and I was properly shamed, A, and B, it made me appreciate, what we do so much more. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a final thought on that. I think if you just listen to the series that we're finishing up here, a lot of what we've been talking about is just swapping stories about what happened, and what choices we made and what those choices ended up, what consequences we, came from those choices. And that's that water cooler talk we always talk about, everyone always talks about. And it'd be hard. I mean, it was great that Oliver gave that example, because I think it'd be hard to play this game without some sort of community, because who do you share your stories with? Because so many different things can happen, and it's not a linear game. You're not going to have the same experience. And so it's you might find somebody on the forum who, like me, played the Morag Tong and you didn't do any of it, so you kind of want to, so yeah, I mean, it's kind of a nice timing for a game like this to come out and for bulletin boards to be a thing, because you have some place to go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was like a quick, I mean, I don't think they were super secure or anything like that, but it was super easy to set up. I think they were very amenable to spam and things like that, was my recollection, but I never set one up. It was a super easy way to be able to set a thing up, though. You just needed to install PHP and put this on top of it. So it gave you sort of quick forum support back in the day. So I remember it for sure. Anyway, I'll do one quick one here. I know we're getting up on time for you, Tim. This one's from Jafool. It's text-to-speech, Morrowind. Hey, guys. Hey, Jafool. In episode 296, part 3 of Morrowind, Brett mentions the game being text-focused really changes things. And we kind of talked about it tonight, too. And went a different direction. As Brett said, it can really make you, or at least me, more mentally engaged. And as Tim pointed out, your variety of quests written and generated can be expanded quicker and cheaper. So why are we stuck with voice acting so much like an albatross? Most people tap a button to skip most of it anyway. Second, Tim mentioned they could do a whole game in Vivek. That's something I've always wanted from a AAA developer. A systems-heavy game based in a smaller area. Instead of a mile wide and an inch deep, go the other way. High fantasy, contemporary, whatever. How great would that be? Anyway, thanks for the nearly 300 episodes of fun, and I wish you many more. Thank you, Jafool. Appreciate it. We are at the 300, actually. Yeah, why do you stick us with voice acting, Tim? Why do you do that to us?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we know why. It's production value, right? It's immersion.
Audiences demand it.
Audiences demand it. I think that though we can appreciate the depth and the breadth that you get from text only, and the flexibility, I think, when you're trying to make a game that goes wide and broader, a lot of people like to listen to voice acting, and they don't mind there not being as much variety, or what have you. So, not everybody can. I mean, I would say that generally the indie space is where text-based, narrative is flourishing, because they don't have the budget to do the voice acting in the same way in some cases. So,
and honestly, it allows them to do a lot more interesting things in the narrative space. You get, you can do more generative stuff. You can, you can do things that are really different. Like, I want to say last year's Wildermyth, which I have not played, but did watch a bit of it being played by Janine Hawkins, who's doing a little work with us. That game does have some sort of some small amounts of voice, is my recollection, but it's mostly text and reading, and and how things are connected, and being able to do things with the fact that your characters are quirky and that can really influence what happens in a major way. I mean, those are things that you can't really do with voice. So it's there. It's just, it has to be for a smaller market, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is it's, you have to be able to do it on a smaller budget, and people are doing great experiments with it. And I hope that continues. I don't expect I honestly hope we don't ever get to a point where we turn to pure text to speech automation. I know that was not the the thrust of the question, but like, I don't really want to get to that with purely digital actors ever, because I think that actors bring so much to a performance that you take things in directions that you didn't, expect to. I want to keep having that creative collaboration. So while it would be neat to have some of that text to speech in some of these other smaller games, I hope we always have the high caliber voice acting that we get, because of what that brings to the experience. But I don't know. It's an issue. Yeah. Anyway, as for a game that's like deeper but not as not as broad. I mean, I think LMNOP, the Spielberg experiment with EA, going back, I don't know, probably 15 years now, was meant to be that. And well, that hasn't come out. Never did make it. There was actually good oral history of it at one point that you can go look up. I don't know if I'll have time to look it up for the show notes, but if I do, it'll be there. That's one that talks about the challenges of that and what they thought they were achieving. I think the issue there is that to get a lot out of those, you have to play them a lot, and I'm not sure that that's what the audience wants either. So I think that's really the issue there, is that to really feel like you understand it, you have to play it a whole bunch, and that's, a lot of people don't want to do that. I don't think that's what the audience often wants either. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't played it yet, but like a narrative version of Deathloop or something,
Right.
Could be interesting. Elsinore, which Harley has brought up before, which is another colleague of ours, which sounds like structurally basically Deathloop, but for narrative, and it's obviously based on Hamlet. So again, an indie game that was pretty well received. I don't know if it's voice acted, but gives them flexibility to do stuff.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So some things worth looking into. That one definitely explores all those sorts of things. And oh gosh, I wish I could remember her name. There's a woman who works in text games who talks a lot about this, and how to like glue things together in storylets and stuff like that, little pieces, and like what are the inputs, and to some degree this was Chris Crawford went off to chase.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's been his thing for years. Yeah,
but like that hasn't really come to fruition either, right? So it just never really kind of got there. It's really, really hard. It's almost too big, and I don't know, brings you more constraints are good, I think, in those cases. Anyway, thanks for the emails to both Oliver and Jaful. We, of course, got those at devgameclub@gmail.com. I've got to wrap up quickly here because Tim's got to go play his game. We're going to try to finish next time. You can send us your reviews. I have a singer review that I was going to try to do tonight, but we just don't have time. I'm sorry, Mystery Dip. Someday, I'll get to it.
He's going to be on the stream in a second. Ask, too. We talked about it last stream, actually.
I'm sorry. I feel bad. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub. You can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
He's also playing games over on his Twitch, same handle, and I've been playing a little bit on Brett Duville. I've been doing my DGC homework on that Saturday evenings, so you can find us there. You're currently playing Village, Resident Evil Village.
Yeah.
Still scaring the pants off you, I understand.
Yeah, yep. It's good at So this one is definitely more traditional, like campy. Like there's some complete nonsense that happens. I still think 7 is one of the scariest. Excuse me. Scariest games I've ever played. 7 is way scarier than this one, with the exception of one chapter that you haven't played. But this is good.
That you have, right?
I have played.
So,
yeah.
Yep. I heard from another colleague that
it
was fun to watch you being terrified. So if you want to see that, you can find it there. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Everts, and our logo, of course, is by Mark Garcia. Have fun becoming the head of your own favorite guild this week, and good night.
Good night. 300.